When my 8-year-old niece Bella walked into my living room and snatched my daughter's brand new tablet, declaring that her mommy said she could have whatever she wanted from our house, I thought it was just typical spoiled behavior. But when my sister Marissa arrived to pick her up and actually defended this theft, claiming our family owed them everything because of some old promise our dying grandmother supposedly made, I realized this wasn't about a tablet. This was about a 20-year lie that had been bleeding our family dry. Before we dive into this family revenge story that'll shock you, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. If you've ever dealt with entitled family members who think they own everything you've worked for, smash that like button and subscribe because this story about karma coming full circle will blow your mind. Trust me, you'll want to see how this family drama unfolds and how justice finally gets served. My name is Serafina, and I've spent the last 15 years building a successful marketing consultancy from the ground up. My husband Marcus and I worked our tails off to give our daughter Zara everything we never had growing up. That Tuesday afternoon started like any other. Zara was excitedly unboxing her early birthday gift, a top-of-the-line tablet she'd been saving her allowance toward for months. We'd surprised her by covering the remaining balance as a reward for her straight A's. Then, Marissa dropped Bella off for what was supposed to be a quick play date while she ran errands. Within 10 minutes, chaos erupted. Bella had grabbed the tablet right out of Zara's hands, and when my daughter protested, Bella smugly announced that her mother said she could take anything she wanted from our house because we owed them. I was stunned. Bella, honey, that's not how it works. This belongs to Zara. No! Bella stomped her foot. Mommy says your family has to share everything with us because Great-Grandma Rose promised. My blood ran cold. Grandma Rose had passed away 2 decades ago, but Marissa had been invoking her name for years to justify increasingly outrageous requests. Free babysitting that turned into week-long stays, borrowing money that never got repaid, using our vacation home whenever she pleased, even demanding we pay for Bella's private school because Rose would have wanted the children to have equal opportunities. When Marissa returned an hour later, I confronted her. Your daughter just tried to steal Zara's tablet, claiming you told her she could take whatever she wants. Marissa didn't even blink. Well, she can. Mom, you know how Rose felt about family sharing. She specifically told me before she died that since you and Marcus were doing so well financially, you'd take care of us. It's only fair. Marissa, that's insane. Grandma Rose never said anything like that to me or Marcus. My sister's eyes hardened. Of course she didn't tell you directly. She knew you'd be selfish about it, but she pulled me aside during her last week and made me promise to remind you of your family obligations. She said the family money should flow to those who need it most. Family money. What family money? Rose had been a retired school teacher living on Social Security. She'd left her modest house to be split between all the grandchildren which we'd sold years ago. Each of us got maybe $3,000 after expenses. Marissa, there was no family money. Rose was barely getting by on her pension. Stop lying, Serafina. I know about the trust fund. Rose told me about the investments, the property holdings, the life insurance policies. She said you and Marcus had access to everything and that I should come to you when Bella needed things. I stared at my sister in disbelief. Either she was deliberately lying or she'd constructed an elaborate fantasy. There is no trust fund. There never was. Every dollar Marcus and I have, we earned ourselves. That's exactly what someone with secret family money would say, Marissa snapped. You think I'm stupid. You think I don't notice how you can afford this house, Zara's private lessons, your fancy cars, on a marketing consultant's salary. Please. The accusation hit like a slap. Marcus and I had sacrificed for years, living below our means, reinvesting everything back into the business. We drove used cars until last year. This house was our first real splurge after a decade of apartment living. Marissa, you can literally see our tax returns. You can see our business financials. We're doing well because we work 80-hour weeks and haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years. Show me the trust documents then. Show me Rose's will. Show me proof that there's no family money. I don't have to prove a negative. You're the one making wild claims. Fine, Marissa said, grabbing Bella's hand. But don't think this is over. Rose made a promise, and I intend to make sure it's kept. Bella deserves the same advantages as Zara, and if you won't do right by family voluntarily, maybe I need to explore other options. The threat hung in the air like poison. After they left, I called my cousin Daniel Rose's favorite grandchild, who'd been executor of her estate. Danny, I need to ask you something weird. Did Grandma Rose ever mention anything about family money or trusts, or taking care of Marissa financially? There was a long pause. Sarah, that's a strange question. Why? I explained the whole bizarre confrontation. Daniel was quiet for several moments before speaking. Sarah, I need to tell you something, but you're not going to like it. About 6 months before Rose died, Marissa started visiting her constantly, like every day. Rose mentioned that Marissa seemed really stressed about money and kept asking about inheritance and whether there were any family assets she didn't know about. My stomach dropped. What did Rose tell her? Rose was getting confused toward the end. You know, the medications made her foggy, but I remember her being worried that Marissa seemed to think there was more money than there actually was. Rose kept saying she wished she could leave everyone more, but her pension barely covered her own expenses. Danny, do you think Marissa might have misunderstood something Rose said, or maybe Rose in her confusion said something that gave Marissa false hope? It's possible, but Sarah, there's something else. About 3 weeks before Rose died, she called me panicking. She said Marissa had brought some papers for her to sign, claiming they were just medical directives, but when Rose looked at them later, they seemed more complicated. She couldn't remember what she'd signed. May. The room started spinning. What kind of papers? I don't know. Rose died before we could figure it out, and I never found any unusual documents when we settled the estate. But if Marissa was manipulating a confused elderly woman into signing things, I hung up feeling sick. Had my sister spent years building an elaborate con based on a dying woman's confused ramblings? Or worse, had she actively deceived Rose into signing something that created false expectations? Either way, I realized this wasn't just about entitled behavior or family drama. If Marissa truly believed she was owed money that didn't exist, or if she'd somehow manipulated Rose in her final weeks, this was fraud. And if she was planning to explore other options to get what she thought she deserved, my family might be in real danger. That night, I made a decision. It was time to find out exactly what had happened in Rose's final months and what papers she might have signed. Because if my sister had been running a long con based on elder abuse, the tablet incident was just the beginning. The next morning, I called Rose's former neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd been like a second grandmother to us kids. At 85, she was still sharp as a tack and had been Rose's closest friend during those final months. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you called," Mrs. Patterson said. "I've been worried about this for years, but didn't know who to talk to. Your sister—" Well, there were some concerning things happening before Rose passed. My hands trembled as I gripped the phone. What kind of things? Marissa started coming around every single day about 6 months before Rose died. At first, I thought it was sweet. Finally, someone was checking on Rose regularly. But then I noticed Rose seemed agitated whenever Marissa left. She'd come over to my house crying, saying she was confused about money and promises she couldn't remember making. Mrs. Patterson paused, choosing her words carefully. Rose told me Marissa kept insisting there were family investments and property that Rose was forgetting about. Marissa would bring bank statements and legal-looking papers telling Rose she needed to sign them to protect the family assets. Rose was so medicated for her pain that she couldn't think clearly. "Did you see any of these papers?" I wish I had. But one day, about 2 weeks before Rose died, she came to my house in tears. She said Marissa had gotten angry with her for not signing something important and had threatened to stop visiting if Rose didn't trust her with family business. Rose was terrified of being abandoned, so she signed whatever Marissa put in front of her. The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. Mrs. Patterson, do you think Rose actually believed there was family money? Oh, no, dear. Rose was always clear about her finances. She lived on Social Security and that tiny teacher's pension. She used to joke that her greatest treasure was the family photos, not any bank account. But toward the end, with the pain medication and Marissa's constant pressure, I think Rose started doubting her own memory. I felt sick. Did you ever see Marissa with any paperwork after Rose died? That's the strangest part. Right after the funeral, Marissa came to Rose's house with some man in a suit. They were going through everything looking frustrated. The man kept saying something about documents that should have been filed. When they saw me watching from my yard, Marissa actually had the nerve to wave and say they were handling Rose's estate business. After hanging up, I knew I needed professional help. I called my lawyer, Janet Morrison, and explained the situation. Serafina, this sounds like a classic case of elder financial abuse, Janet said grimly. If your sister convinced a medicated, confused elderly woman to sign documents under false pretenses, that's fraud. And if she's been using those fraudulent documents to justify ongoing financial demands, that's extortion. But what could she have possibly gotten Rose to sign that would matter now Rose didn't have any money to steal? That's what we need to find out. I'm going to contact the probate court and request copies of all documents filed in Rose's estate. If Marissa filed anything unusual, it'll be there. In the meantime, I want you to document every financial demand she's made over the years. While Janet started her investigation, I spent the weekend going through old emails, texts, and bank records. The pattern was nauseating. Over 5 years, Marissa had borrowed nearly $30,000 that was never repaid. She'd used our credit cards for emergencies that turned out to be shopping sprees. She'd moved into our vacation rental for 2 months last summer, claiming Rose had promised her free family housing. But the most disturbing discovery was a series of texts from 3 years ago, right after we'd bought our current house. Marissa, I can't believe you bought that mansion without consulting me about Rose's instructions. Me, what instructions? It's our money, our decision? Marissa, Rose specifically said major financial decisions should consider the whole family's needs. I have documentation. Me, what documentation? Marissa, you'll see when the time is right. I'd forgotten about those texts, dismissing them as typical Marissa drama, but now they read like threats. Monday morning, Janet called with devastating news. Serafina, we found what she filed. Your sister submitted a document to the probate court claiming Rose had created a family financial responsibility agreement requiring you and Marcus to provide for Marissa and Bella's needs from your shared family trust. But there is no family trust. I know that and you know that, but the document appears to be signed by Rose. It's complete nonsense legally. Rose couldn't bind you to financial obligations you never agreed to. But your sister has been carrying around a certified copy of this filing for 5 years, using it to justify her demands. Is it fraud? Absolutely. The document references assets that never existed and creates obligations that are legally impossible. But here's the really sick part. I think your sister actually believes this gives her legal rights to your money. That afternoon, I decided it was time for a confrontation. I invited Marissa over for coffee, telling her I wanted to discuss family financial responsibilities. She arrived with a folder of papers and a smug expression. I'm glad you're finally ready to have an honest conversation, Marissa said, spreading documents across my kitchen table. I brought copies of everything Rose left us. The family agreement, the trust documentation, the responsibility guidelines. I stared at the papers. They looked official with legal language and fancy formatting. But reading closer, they were complete fantasy. References to family investment portfolios and inherited property holdings that never existed. Obligations for primary income earners to support family members in need. It was like reading a child's idea of what legal documents should say. Marissa, none of this is real. There was no family trust. Rose was a retired teacher with barely any savings. Stop lying, Marissa snapped. It's all right here, signed and notarized. Rose was very specific about how the family money should be managed. You and Marcus have been violating her wishes for years. Marissa, who helped you create these documents. I didn't create anything. Rose had them drawn up by her lawyer during her last month. She wanted to make sure the family would stay together financially after she was gone. But something in her eyes flickered when she said it. A tiny tell that suggested she knew exactly how fabricated this all was. Which lawyer? I pressed. Some estate planning specialist. Rose handled all the details. What was his name? I don't remember. Rose managed all that. Marissa Rose didn't have a lawyer. Daniel was her executor and he handled everything through legal aid. For the first time, my sister looked genuinely rattled. Maybe it was someone Daniel hired. I'm going to call Daniel right now and ask him. No. Marissa grabbed the papers, her mask finally slipping. You don't understand. This isn't about lawyers or legal technicalities. This is about family. This is about doing what's right. And in that moment, I knew. She knew the documents were fake. She'd created them herself, probably using Rose's confused state to get signatures on blank papers. For 5 years, she'd been running a con using our dead grandmother's name to justify systematic financial abuse. The question now was how far was she willing to go to keep the lie alive? The next morning, I woke up to find my car keyed and a note under my windshield wiper. Family obligations don't disappear just because you're selfish. Think about what matters most. No signature, but I recognized Marissa's handwriting. Marcus was furious. That's it. We're calling the police. But I had a better idea. Over breakfast, I called my cousin Daniel again. Danny, I need your help with something big. Marissa has been forging documents in Rose's name, and I think it's time the whole family knew the truth. What kind of documents? I explained everything. The fake trust paperwork, the 5 years of financial manipulation, the escalating demands. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, I always wondered why Marissa never seemed surprised by Rose's modest estate. Most people expect their grandparents to leave more than they actually do, but Marissa acted like she knew there should be more money somewhere. I think she convinced herself there really was money, or maybe she thought Rose was hiding assets. Either way, she's been using fake documents to justify bleeding us dry. What do you need from me? Help me gather the family. Everyone needs to see what she's been doing. That afternoon, Daniel started making calls. Rose's family was scattered across 3 states, but everyone remembered Marissa's increasingly strange behavior over the years. My cousin Jennifer had been asked to loan money for Bella's summer camp because of Rose's educational fund guidelines. My Uncle Tom had been pressured to let Marissa use his beach house for free because of family property sharing agreements. My Aunt Sarah had been guilt-tripped into paying for Bella's dance lessons because of Rose's promise about equal opportunities for all grandchildren. The pattern was everywhere. Marissa had been systematically working through the family using variations of the same lie to extract money favors and resources from everyone. But the most shocking revelation came from my cousin Rachel, who worked in estate law. Sarah, about 8 months ago, Marissa contacted me asking hypothetical questions about creating retroactive trust documents. She claimed she was writing a novel and needed to know if it was possible to make legal papers look like they'd been created years earlier. I told her it would be fraud and incredibly illegal. What did she say to that? She laughed it off and said fiction writers have to research all sorts of crimes for their stories. But now that you're telling me about these fake documents, I think she was planning this. The family meeting was set for Saturday at Daniel's house, but Wednesday night I got a call that changed everything. Mrs. Patterson was crying. "Serafina, honey, something terrible has happened. Someone broke into my house last night and went through all my papers. They took the box where I kept Rose's last letters and some photos, but I think they were looking for something specific because they left everything else alone." My blood turned to ice. "Mrs. Patterson, did you tell anyone you'd been talking to me about Rose?" "Well, yes. Your sister called yesterday asking if you'd been in touch. She said she was worried about family members spreading rumors about Rose's final wishes. I mentioned that we'd talked about Rose's confusion during those last months and how upset Rose was about the papers she'd signed." "Did you tell her about Rose coming to you crying?" "I did. Marissa got very quiet and asked exactly what Rose had told me. When I said Rose was worried she'd signed something important without understanding it, Marissa said she'd need to think about how to protect Rose's reputation from misunderstandings." The break-in wasn't random. Marissa was covering her tracks, destroying any evidence that could contradict her story. But she'd made a critical mistake. She'd revealed that she knew exactly which evidence was dangerous to her. Thursday morning, I called Janet with an update. "My sister just committed breaking and entering to steal evidence. She's escalating." "Serafina, I'm worried about your safety. Someone who's been running a 5-year con isn't going to just give up quietly. Have you considered that she might see you as a threat to everything she's built her life around?" Janet was right. If Marissa had been justifying her lifestyle with these fake family obligations for years, she couldn't afford for the truth to come out. And if she'd convinced Bella that the family owed them everything, what would happen to her daughter's worldview if the lie collapsed? That evening, Marcus and I were putting Zara to bed when we heard glass breaking downstairs. We called 911 immediately, but by the time police arrived, whoever it was had vanished. The only thing taken was my laptop from the kitchen counter, the laptop where I'd been storing all my research on Marissa's fake documents. The police officer, Detective Martinez, took our report seriously. "Mrs. Thompson, we've seen cases like this before. Family financial fraud often escalates to property crimes when the perpetrator feels cornered. Has anyone been making threats?" I showed him the note from my car and explained about Mrs. Patterson's break-in. Detective Martinez looked grim. "I want you to consider a restraining order, and I strongly recommend changing your locks and installing security cameras. Someone who's desperate enough to commit burglary isn't going to stop there." Friday afternoon brought the call I'd been dreading. Zara's school counselor, Mrs. Chen, sounded concerned. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to speak with you about something unusual. Your sister-in-law came by today claiming there was a family emergency and asking to pick up Zara early. When we told her our policy requires parental authorization, she became quite agitated. She kept insisting that as family, she had rights to make decisions about Zara's welfare." My heart stopped. "Did she try to take Zara?" "No, but she made some concerning statements. She said something about how Zara's privileged lifestyle was coming at the expense of her own daughter and how that needed to be corrected. Then she asked detailed questions about Zara's after-school schedule and transportation arrangements. I immediately called the school and put a lock on Zara's record specifying that only Marcus and I were authorized to pick her up or make any decisions. Then I called Detective Martinez. "This is beyond harassment now," he said. "She's targeting your child. I'm expediting the restraining order paperwork." Saturday morning, the family meeting finally happened. 13 relatives gathered in Daniel's living room as I laid out everything. The fake documents, the systematic financial abuse, the escalating criminal behavior, the threat to Zara. The reaction was explosive. Uncle Tom was livid about the beach house manipulation. Jennifer was furious about the camp money she'd never gotten back. Rachel was professionally outraged about the legal document forgery. But the most powerful ally emerged unexpectedly. My Aunt Linda Rose's youngest daughter had been quiet throughout my presentation. Finally, she spoke. I need to tell you all something I've kept secret for 20 years. Marissa didn't just manipulate Rose at the end of her life. She's been doing this since high school. The room went silent. When Marissa was 17, she convinced my mother that she had learning disabilities and needed expensive private tutoring. Mom paid for 2 years of specialized education that Marissa didn't actually need. When Marissa was 22, she told Mom she'd been accepted to graduate school and needed tuition money. Mom took out a second mortgage to pay for it. Marissa never enrolled in any program. Linda's voice was shaking. When Marissa was 25, she claimed she was starting a business and needed investment capital. Mom gave her the last of her retirement savings. There was never any business. That's why Mom was living on just Social Security at the end. Marissa had already taken everything. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't just about Rose's final months. This wasn't even about the last 5 years of manipulating our extended family. Marissa had been running cons for decades, systematically exploiting the people who loved her most. Linda, why didn't you ever tell anyone? Daniel asked. Because every time I tried to confront Marissa, she'd threatened to cut off contact with Bella. She knew Mom would rather be financially abused than lose access to her granddaughter. And after Mom died, I thought, I hoped maybe Marissa would change. But Marissa hadn't changed. She'd just found new victims. As the meeting broke up, I had something I'd never expected a united family ready to fight back. The question was whether we were strong enough to stop someone who'd been perfecting her manipulation tactics for over 2 decades. Sunday night, I got my answer. Marissa called her voice eerily calm. I heard you had a little family gathering yesterday. I hope you enjoyed spreading your lies. Marissa, we know about everything. The fake documents, the break-ins, everything. It's over. Nothing is over, sister dear. In fact, it's just beginning. You see, I've been documenting your refusal to honor Rose's wishes for years. I have evidence of your financial abuse of family members in need. And if you keep trying to destroy Rose's legacy, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of people you really are. The line went dead, but her message was clear. She was preparing for war. Monday morning started with what I thought was good news. My cousin Rachel called, excited about a breakthrough in building our legal case against Marissa. Sarah, I found something huge. I was going through my old files and discovered that Marissa actually did consult with a document preparation service about 8 months before Rose died. She paid them to create what she called estate planning templates for an elderly family member. My heart raced. That's perfect evidence that she premeditated the whole thing. Exactly. And get this, the service keeps detailed records. They have copies of everything she requested, including drafts of the fake trust documents. I'm driving over this afternoon with copies of everything. Rachel arrived at 3 o'clock with a thick folder of papers. As we spread them across my dining room table, the scope of Marissa's planning became terrifyingly clear. She'd spent months crafting the perfect con, creating multiple versions of fake estate documents until she found language that sounded convincing enough. Look at this. Rachel pointed to a handwritten note stapled to one of the drafts. She specifically requested language that would make family members feel legally obligated to provide ongoing financial support. She was targeting all of us from the beginning. But as we documented everything, Rachel kept checking her phone nervously. Finally, she set down her papers and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Marissa called me this morning before I came over." "What did she say?" Rachel's voice got smaller. "She offered me $10,000 to tell you that I'd made a mistake about the document service. She said she'd been trying to protect the family from embarrassment about Rose's confused final months, and that exposing the truth would only hurt everyone." I stared at my cousin in disbelief. "Please, tell me you said no." "Of course I said no. But Sarah, she knows things. About my divorce, about my financial problems, about mistakes I've made. She said if I helped her correct this misunderstanding, she'd make sure none of my personal business became public knowledge." "What kind of personal business?" Rachel looked miserable. "Last year, when my marriage was falling apart, I made some bad decisions with client trust funds. Nothing that hurt anyone. I paid everything back within weeks. But it wasn't technically legal. Marissa somehow found out about it." My stomach dropped. If Rachel had misappropriated client funds, even temporarily, she could lose her law license. How could Marissa possibly know about that? I don't know, but she quoted specific amounts and dates. She knew details that only my accountant and therapist should know. The implications were staggering. Marissa had been investigating our family members looking for leverage points. She wasn't just running a financial con, she was building blackmail material to ensure compliance. "Rachel, you can't let her threaten you into lying." "I know, but Sarah, if this comes out, I lose everything. My career, my reputation, my ability to support my kids. Marissa promised that if I just tell everyone I was mistaken about the documents, she'll forget about my indiscretions." I felt the ground shifting under my feet. Rachel was our strongest ally, our legal expert, the person whose professional opinion could definitively expose Marissa's fraud. Without her testimony about the document service, we had much less concrete evidence. "What are you going to do?" Rachel gathered up her papers slowly. "I'm going to tell the family that I was wrong, that I mixed up my files and the document service consultation was for a different client entirely." "Rachel, please don't do this." "I have to, Sarah. I'm sorry." She paused at the door. "But I want you to know, everything I showed you today is real. Marissa absolutely planned this fraud. I'm just not going to be the one to testify about it anymore." After Rachel left, I called Daniel immediately. "We have a problem. Rachel just flipped." "What do you mean, flipped?" I explained about Marissa's blackmail attempt and Rachel's decision to recant her evidence. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah, if Marissa has dirt on Rachel, she probably has information about other family members too. We need to warn everyone." But it was too late. Over the next 2 days, our coalition began crumbling. Uncle Tom called to say he'd reconsidered the situation and thought maybe we were being too harsh on Marissa. Jennifer suddenly decided that the camp money wasn't worth fighting over. Aunt Linda went completely silent, not returning calls. Wednesday evening, Daniel called with devastating news. "Sarah, I think I know how Marissa got information on everyone. Remember that genealogy project she started 3 years ago? She convinced half the family to give her access to personal documents, financial records, even medical information. She said she was creating a comprehensive family history." "Oh my God, she was building blackmail files." "It gets worse." Linda finally called me back. Marissa threatened to reveal that Linda's youngest son isn't actually her husband's biological child. It's true, and Linda's marriage would end if it came out. She's backing down from supporting us. By Thursday, I felt completely alone. One by one, Marissa had picked off our allies using their own secrets against them. She'd turned our family meeting into a treasure trove of leverage points, learning exactly which pressure points would make each person fold. Friday morning brought the final betrayal. Detective Martinez called with an update on our case. Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid I have some troubling news. Your cousin Rachel contacted our department yesterday and recanted her previous statements about your sister's document fraud. She now claims she was mistaken about the evidence and that your allegations are unfounded. Detective, she's being blackmailed. I understand your frustration, but without Ms. Rachel's testimony, we don't have enough evidence to pursue criminal charges. She was our primary witness about the premeditated nature of the fraud. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen feeling utterly defeated. Marissa had won. She'd systematically neutralized every ally, every piece of evidence, every avenue of justice. Worse, she'd done it using our family's own secrets and vulnerabilities against us. That afternoon, Marissa called with a victor's smugness in her voice. I hope you've learned something from this little episode, sister dear. Family loyalty goes both ways. When you try to destroy one family member, you end up destroying the whole family. You threatened and blackmailed everyone. I protected everyone from making terrible mistakes. Rachel could have lost her career over some silly misunderstanding about document services. Linda's marriage could have been destroyed by ancient gossip. I simply reminded people what they had to lose if they chose the wrong side. This isn't over, Marissa. Oh, but it is. Because now you understand the rules. I have information about every single person in our family. I know about Marcus's business tax issues from 2 years ago. I know about your college drinking incident that you've never told him about. I know about Zara's real parentage concerns from when you and Marcus were separated. The last accusation hit like a physical blow. There were no parentage concerns. Zara was absolutely Marcus's daughter. But Marissa was demonstrating that she could manufacture scandals as easily as she could exploit real ones. Here's how this works going forward, Marissa continued. You're going to honor Rose's family financial agreements. You're going to stop spreading lies about my character. And you're going to remember that family loyalty is a two-way street. Because if you don't, everyone in this family is going to learn some very uncomfortable truths about each other. The line went dead, leaving me alone with the realization that Marissa hadn't just won this battle. She'd built a system of mutual destruction that could tear our entire family apart. For 3 days after Marissa's threatening call, I felt completely hopeless. She'd outmaneuvered me at every turn, turning our own family against us through blackmail and manipulation. Marcus tried to convince me to just pay her demands and move on, but something inside me refused to surrender to a bully who'd been exploiting our dead grandmother's memory. Then, Tuesday morning brought an unexpected phone call that changed everything. Is this Serafina Thompson? My name is Elizabeth Hartwell, and I'm an investigator with the State Elder Abuse Prevention Unit. I understand you may have information about financial exploitation of an elderly family member. I was confused. I'm sorry who referred you to me. Actually, no one referred me to you. I'm calling because your sister Marissa submitted paperwork to our office 3 weeks ago, claiming that you and your husband have been financially abusing elderly family members and violating estate settlement agreements. My jaw dropped. She reported U.S. for elder abuse. Yes, she provided quite detailed allegations about your misappropriation of family trust funds and your refusal to honor financial obligations to vulnerable family members. However, when we began investigating her claims, we discovered some irregularities in her documentation. Elizabeth's tone was professionally neutral, but I detected an undercurrent of skepticism. Ms. Thompson, would you be available to meet with me this week? I'd like to review the documents your sister provided and get your perspective on these allegations. We scheduled a meeting for Thursday afternoon. When Elizabeth arrived at my house, she was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of a stern bureaucrat, she was a warm woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Ms. Thompson, I've been investigating elder financial abuse for 12 years, and I've never seen a case quite like this one. She began spreading Marissa's complaint paperwork across my kitchen table. Your sister submitted 47 pages of documentation claiming systematic family financial abuse spanning multiple years. I looked at the papers and felt sick. Marissa had created an elaborate fictional narrative where Marcus and I were the villains hoarding family money while vulnerable relatives suffered. According to her version, we'd manipulated a confused elderly woman into signing away family assets and then denied our obligations to care for needy family members. The problem, Elizabeth continued, is that none of your sister's documentation makes sense from a legal standpoint. She references trust funds that don't exist, estate obligations that are legally impossible, and financial instruments that no legitimate attorney would ever create. So you know she's lying. I know she's submitted fraudulent documentation to a state agency, which is a felony, but I need to understand the full scope of what's happening here before I can determine how to proceed. Over the next 2 hours, I told Elizabeth everything: the fake documents, the years of financial manipulation, the systematic blackmail of family members, the escalating threats. She took detailed notes and asked incredibly specific questions about dates, amounts, and documentation. Ms. Thompson, what your sister has done goes far beyond simple family drama. She's committed multiple felonies: elder abuse, document fraud, filing false reports with state agencies, extortion, and possibly identity theft. But more importantly, she's demonstrated a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that suggests she won't stop voluntarily. What can you do about it? More than you might expect. Elder abuse investigators have broad authority to examine financial records, interview family members, and coordinate with law enforcement. Unlike local police, we specialize in these complex family financial crimes. Elizabeth leaned forward, her expression serious. But I need you to understand something. If we proceed with this investigation, your sister will likely face serious criminal charges. This isn't just about getting your family to stop enabling her behavior. This is about potential prison time. She's been terrorizing elderly relatives and vulnerable family members for decades. She threatened my child. She's destroyed family relationships through blackmail. How is prison not appropriate? I agree completely. I just want you to understand the stakes before we move forward. What do you need from me? Everything. Financial records, communications, witness statements, documentation of every demand she's made over the years. I also want to interview Mrs. Patterson about the break-in and get statements from any family members who are willing to come forward. What about the blackmail? Everyone she has dirt on is too scared to testify. Elizabeth smiled grimly. Ms. Thompson blackmail victims often find courage once they realize the person threatening them is facing serious prison time. And in my experience, most family secrets are far less damaging than people fear they'll be. Over the next week, Elizabeth's investigation moved with startling efficiency. She interviewed Mrs. Patterson, who provided detailed testimony about Marissa's manipulation of Rose during her final months. She examined the fake documents with forensic specialists who confirmed they'd been created using modern software and artificially aged. Most importantly, Elizabeth had resources I'd never imagined. She subpoenaed Marissa's financial records and discovered a pattern of suspicious deposits that coincided exactly with her demands for family money. She traced the document preparation service and found detailed records of Marissa's requests for fake estate paperwork. But the breakthrough came when Elizabeth interviewed the notary whose stamp appeared on Rose's supposed family trust documents. Mr. Hendricks was very clear, Elizabeth told me during our Friday update call. He never notarized any documents for your grandmother. In fact, he's never heard of Rose Thompson. Your sister forged his notary stamp as well as your grandmother's signature. So we have her on forgery, too. We have her on everything. document fraud, elder abuse, filing false police reports, extortion, identity theft, and about 6 other felonies. But the most serious charge will be what's called organized scheme to defraud, basically running a multi-year criminal enterprise targeting vulnerable family members. Saturday afternoon, Elizabeth called with news that made my heart race. Ms. Thompson were executing search warrants on Monday morning. I wanted to give you advance notice because your sister will likely realize her situation is quite serious after that happens. Will she be arrested? That depends on what we find during the search, but I want you to take additional security precautions over the next few days. People facing major criminal charges sometimes make desperate decisions. Sunday evening, I was putting Zara to bed when Marcus called me downstairs urgently. Through our front window, we could see Marissa sitting in her car across the street, just watching our house. I called Elizabeth immediately. She's been out there for an hour just staring at our house. I'm sending a patrol car over right now, and Ms. Thompson, tomorrow changes everything. By this time tomorrow evening, your sister will either be in custody or she'll be running. Either way, her ability to terrorize your family will be finished. As we waited for the police to arrive, I watched Marissa through the window. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of her, because I finally understood something she'd never counted on. There are people whose job it is to stop predators like her, and once they get involved, all the blackmail and manipulation in the world can't save you. Monday morning was coming, and with it justice. Monday morning at 7:30, I watched from my kitchen window as Elizabeth and 3 other investigators executed a search warrant on Marissa's house. By 9:15, they'd loaded 6 boxes of evidence into their van, including what Elizabeth later told me was a detailed filing system of blackmail material on over 20 family members. Marissa was arrested at 10:45. The charges were staggering. 12 felony counts including elder abuse, organized fraud, identity theft, extortion, and filing false police reports. But the moment that felt like true justice came when Elizabeth called me that afternoon. Ms. Thompson, we found something in your sister's home office that I think you need to know about. She had a detailed multi-year plan for systematically extracting money from your entire extended family. She'd researched everyone's financial situations, personal vulnerabilities, and legal pressure points. This wasn't opportunistic greed. This was a calculated criminal enterprise. How long had she been planning it? Based on her records, at least 7 years. She started building files on family members while your grandmother was still healthy, clearly planning to exploit Rose's eventual decline. She even had backup plans for what to do if certain family members became suspicious or resistant. The scope of Marissa's manipulation was breathtaking. She'd spent years cultivating an image as the caring family member who visited Rose most often, all while preparing to exploit that relationship for maximum financial gain. She'd identified which relatives were most likely to help family members in need, then systematically targeted them with elaborate sob stories and fake legal obligations. But perhaps most disturbing, she'd prepared for resistance. Her blackmail files contained backup plans for destroying anyone who challenged her, including detailed strategies for isolating potential whistleblowers and turning family members against each other. The good news, Elizabeth continued, is that we're prepared to offer immunity deals to any family members who cooperate with our investigation. Most of the information she was using for blackmail involves minor financial indiscretions or personal matters that don't actually constitute crimes. Over the next week, the truth came out in ways I never expected. Rachel was the first to come forward providing detailed testimony about Marissa's document fraud in exchange for immunity regarding her temporary client fund issue. It turned out that what she'd been terrified of losing her license over was actually a common accounting problem that could have been resolved with a simple ethics board consultation. Uncle Tom admitted that his reconsideration of our case had come after Marissa threatened to reveal his 15-year-old bankruptcy to his new wife. When Elizabeth explained that bankruptcy records are public information anyway, Tom was furious at himself for being manipulated by such an empty threat. Jennifer discovered that Marissa's evidence of her supposed affair was actually fabricated using social media photos and fake text messages. Linda learned that Marissa had been lying about her son's paternity based purely on his resemblance to a family friend. One by one, our family members realized they'd been terrorized by smoke and mirrors. Marissa's greatest weapon had been fear itself. The fear that their secrets were worse than they actually were, and that exposure would be more devastating than it turned out to be. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Marissa's defense attorney tried to argue that she'd genuinely believed Rose had wanted the family to support her financially, but the evidence was overwhelming. The fake documents, the forged notary stamps, the systematic blackmail files, the detailed criminal planning records. It all painted a picture of calculated predation spanning multiple years. The most powerful moment came when Mrs. Patterson testified about Rose's final months. At 87 years old, she walked slowly to the witness stand and spoke in a clear, strong voice about watching her best friend being systematically confused and manipulated by someone she trusted completely. "Rose loved that girl," Mrs. Patterson said, looking directly at Marissa. "She would have given her anything she actually had to give, but that wasn't enough. Marissa wanted things that didn't exist, so she convinced a dying woman that she was forgetting her own promises and obligations. That's not just theft, that's cruelty." Marissa was sentenced to 8 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution of $67,000 to family members she'd defrauded. But more importantly, the criminal conviction meant that Bella would be placed with Marcus and me as her guardians, while Marissa served her sentence. At first, I worried about raising my niece while she processed the truth about her mother. But Bella turned out to be remarkably resilient. After years of being told that our family owed her everything, she seemed relieved to finally understand why other children didn't live the way she'd been taught to expect. "Aunt Sarah," she said about a month after moving in with us, "I always felt bad about taking things from Zara. Mommy said it was fair, but it never felt fair. Now I know why." Helping Bella adjust became a healing process for our entire family. She and Zara developed a genuine sisterly bond based on mutual respect rather than artificial obligations. And watching Bella thrive in an environment with clear boundaries and honest communication made me realize how much damage Marissa's lies had been doing to her own daughter. The extended family slowly rebuilt as well. Without Marissa's manipulation and blackmail holding us apart, we rediscovered why we'd enjoyed each other's company in the first place. Rachel became Bella's unofficial legal guardian advocate, ensuring her mother's crimes didn't negatively impact her future opportunities. Daniel started hosting monthly family gatherings where we could maintain connections without anyone feeling financially obligated to anyone else. Most surprisingly, Mrs. Patterson became like a second grandmother to both girls. She shared stories about Rose's real personality, her humor, her independence, her genuine love for family that never involved money or manipulation. These stories helped Bella understand what healthy family relationships actually looked like. 2 years later, I can honestly say that Marissa's downfall was the best thing that ever happened to our family. Not because we enjoyed seeing her face consequences, but because her absence allowed us to build genuine relationships based on love and mutual support rather than obligation and fear. Bella is thriving in school, has made genuine friends, and seems to genuinely enjoy contributing to our household rather than expecting to be served. Zara has learned valuable lessons about standing up to bullies and protecting people she cares about. Marcus and I have grown closer through the experience of successfully protecting our family from a real threat. And our extended family has become something Rose would actually recognize. People who choose to care for each other because they want to, not because they're being manipulated into it. Elizabeth still checks in occasionally, usually around holidays. She told me that our case has become a training example for new elder abuse investigators because it demonstrates how family financial predators can operate for years without detection when they're skilled at emotional manipulation. The key lesson, she explained, is that real family love never involves threats, blackmail, or manufactured obligations. When someone claims you owe them something but can't explain exactly why, that's usually manipulation, not obligation. Have you ever dealt with a family member who used guilt and fake obligations to control others? What signs did you notice that something wasn't right? Drop your experiences in the comments. Your stories might help someone else recognize similar manipulation before it goes too far. And if this story about family karma and justice resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama with satisfying endings. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's possible to break free from toxic family dynamics and build something healthier. Thank you for following this journey with me, and remember, real family bonds are built on love and mutual respect, not fear and fabricated debts. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior even when they're family. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never underestimate the power of truth to eventually win over manipulation.